Hi guys, my name is Katerina and welcome to my channel, and in today's video I wanted to talk to you about world building and how to world build. I'm not gonna be going into too much details about how exactly to world build from A to Z because I think it's a very personal process and it's a creative process. You do what you wish, but I'm here to basically give you some tips of what I think is important to think about while world building to build a realistic world that feels like a real place. So let's go. World building is very fun process, but it also can be very overwhelming. First, it can overwhelm you and you actually start world building forever and never write your story. Or on another side, you can be so overwhelmed by the idea of world building that you don't want to even, you quit. You don't want to do it. It's too much. It's very hard to do it. So, and it is fair because you're building a world. And in order to build the world right, you have to think about so many things. And it's very easy to not think about something that is very important and have a gaping hole in your world building. I'm gonna share with you my thought process of how to world build to avoid all of this gaping holes, to create a skeleton of the world building correctly, so then you can add details and they all hold and stay in place. My first advice or tip would be to actually let the world build itself. And by this I mean go back and think where everything started. I'm not suggesting you go and start like, oh, the god created this and this, or a great explosion, I don't know, created universe. This is not, don't go this far. Go sometime far, let's say for example up until the written history or certain historical event that people still remember today. That I think is a good starting point. Or some, for example, geological event that made things the way they are now. Something that as far as you can go so it still affects current day. And then from this event, start building to the current situation. Start thinking, oh, those people lived here and those people lived here. There were mountains right there. Those people didn't like those people. They always had war. And there was this big sea that nobody could cross, for example. And then you kind of start thinking over the years what would happen, how this scenario would develop, what new technologies will be developed, or if you have magic, what new magic will be developed, what new treaties would be made, what people went extinct, or one people, for example, they merged their culture and merged their tradition and, became the whole new people, for example, or which countries fell apart, which countries got created, which countries became at war that were not at war before, and why, and then how this affects the history. And if you start thinking about this, by the time you arrive at this current point in time, you already understand this complex backstory of what is happening. And from when you have a backstory or understanding that this is basically the base of where everything started and how we got to this point, now you can start sprinkling more details in there. So I think this is a good idea to start thinking about your world from some point in history and start building it from there. And then from there, two major things that you have to consider while creating your world is geography and how geography changes and how people utilize geography, and communication, how people communicate with each other. Do they even communicate? Do they communicate with straight facts? Or they communicate with a very, very abstract folklore that's very hard to understand, or what are the ways of keeping information and transmitting information through time. Those two aspects will greatly affect, combined with the first tip that I gave you, how your world will be developed and what your world is at this point in time. Basically, if you look at our world, both of those aspects, how we got here, geography, how geography affected us, and how we record information and tell information to people right now, to people in the future, and so on, how this affects our world. We can see that it affects our world right now. And this is good news because you can go and study and learn patterns of how those things work or how they can work. For example, now if you use some magical geography or use some magical way of communication, you can understand the logic of how this affects our world and how it can affect your created imaginary world. Luckily, you have resources to look for. Geography is very known to divide people, connect people, start wars, make some countries flourish. For example, geography of United States is a very big reason why United States is such economically strong country. Or for example, geography of Russia, the country I come from, is the reason why it's very hard to conquer Russia. It was very hard to do this throughout the times because it's so massive, and in order to attack any important city, army need to cross crazy amount of distance. And there's a huge historical fun facts that a lot of people who try to invade Russia failed because it's just hard to get through to important places. So this is very important things, and you can study it about different countries and think about how it can affect your world. It's really fun. You don't really have to go crazy in depth there. Just think general things like mountains, rivers, seas. You know, rivers is the way to transport goods and all whatnot. Mountains is a natural obstacle, and sea, depending how in your world people are adapted and travel into the sea, is also a great potential for trade, but also can be deadly, mysterious. People, as think about how people thought about the seas before, oceans. People thought that a monster was living in there. So think about all of things. And folklore and communication is also very important, because then you can play with information that you already thought through to decide how much of this information people actually know right now, how much truth people know right now, or how much information is so distorted that it is unrecognizable. I think just adding this communication aspect to it, for example, imagine you have like fairy tales mostly that tell the stories of the old, and then you can assume all those fairy tales might be metaphors, or they're extremely true. All those fairy tales were changed a million times. All those fairy tales is propaganda by this another country next door, the country of your character's origin, and it's meant to always keep people in the dark and not tell them the real thing. So just combining those three aspects together, I think will already create a very, very important base for your world building. And then you can start zooming in when you have all of these things laid out. You can zoom in on the country, on the city, on the tribe, on the island, what have you, and start thinking, okay, this island doesn't, or this country doesn't just exist in vacuum. They exist in the world. This country was forged by the world. And from there on, they started deciding their own government thing to make them what they are, to make them survive in this world. A lot of this is reaction to external circumstances. A lot of countries, the way they are is because they had problems and the way that they solved them. Things are just very simple like this. And you can start thinking about normal problems that arise in the society and think how the country or location or community that you're focusing on solve them. For example, crime, normal problem, people commit crimes, and how is your community dealing with it? What is their solution to deal with crime? Or for example, government. Somebody needs to decide things for their community. How did they solve this problem? You don't have to actually grab any of the structures of those things from a real world. You can figure out your own by just asking those questions and kind of solving the same problem society has to solve for them. So I think those things are very important when creating world building. How your world will develop into time, how communications are working through time and now, how geography works within your world and how it was affecting how your world was developing, and what problems arises in current societies that you're focusing on and how the society decided to solve those problems. So I think those 4 things are already a good start and can give you a good base of how to world build, and then you can add a lot of creative stuff already with this and then keep adding it on top. So I hope this video will be useful for you, and I hope it gave you some ideas on world building. I probably will pop up, share more ideas of world building because it's such a huge topic that is not coverable in one video or one lecture or one book. It's a big thing, and the only thing I think I can offer is tips and, you know, ideas that I might have. So if you have your own, please leave them in the comments down below. I'm really interested to read them, and I'm sure other people will be interested to read them. So thank you so much guys for watching, and I hope you're having a good day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Thank you so much guys.